If you have a dog, then you probably noticed that your dog looks at you differently than it looks at anyone else. You've noticed it. That specific stare, not just seeing you, reading you, like it's tracking something underneath your expression that you haven't said out loud yet. Like it knows something about where you are emotionally before you've admitted it to yourself. You probably called it cute, moved on. But that look has a history so long and so strange that when you actually understand it, you'll never brush it off again. Because that look wasn't an accident, it wasn't luck, it was built specifically for you. And the story of how it got there is one of the most quietly unsettling things you'll ever learn about yourself. You probably think you know how dogs happened. Your ancestors found wolf cubs, raised them, bred the friendly ones. Over generations, turned a predator into a companion. Humans chose wolves. Humans created dogs. It's a clean story. Makes your ancestors sound clever and intentional. But unfortunately, it's wrong. Here's what actually happened. In 2021, geneticist Anders Bergström mapped ancient dog DNA across dozens of archaeological sites on multiple continents and found something that broke that entire narrative. Dogs weren't domesticated in one place by one group of clever humans. They were domesticated independently, repeatedly, across multiple continents, across a span of time so large it points to only one explanation. Your ancestors didn't choose wolves. Wolves chose your ancestors. And the reason they did has nothing to do with loyalty or love or any of the things you feel when you look at your dog right now. Think about what your ancestors' campsite actually looked like 40,000 years ago. Messy, loud, smelling of smoke and blood and discarded food. Not the kind of place any sane predator would approach voluntarily. Your ancestors were dangerous, unpredictable, the most lethal species on the planet, and yet some wolves came anyway, not because they were friendly, because they were starving, and just slightly, just barely, less afraid than the wolves that stayed back in the dark. Those wolves ate the scraps at the edge of your ancestors' fire, survived winters that killed the others, had more offspring, passed that slightly less afraid quality down to their cubs. Your ancestors didn't reach out. They just existed, and something came toward them anyway, generation after generation, selecting not for strength, not for speed, for the ability to be near you without falling apart. And here's what that means for you right now. Your dog, the one that follows you from room to room, that tilts its head when you talk, that parks itself on your feet for no functional reason, is the direct descendant of those wolves. The hungry ones, the brave ones, the ones that decided your ancestors were worth the risk. It wasn't bred for cuteness, wasn't designed for companionship in any intentional way. It was shaped by 40,000 years of one simple pressure: get close to humans, or die. And your dog got very, very good at getting close to humans. But you might be thinking, okay, wolves got comfortable around people. Fine, that explains dogs existing. It doesn't explain why you feel what you feel when you look at one, because what you feel isn't just fondness for an animal. It's something deeper, something that makes you talk to it like it understands, that makes you reorganize your schedule around its needs, that makes the grief when you lose one feel like losing a person. You've probably wondered why it hits that hard. Here's why. Your brain has a bonding system, deep, ancient, chemical, the same system that fires when a mother looks at her newborn, when you fall in love, when you feel the specific warmth of someone you completely trust. It runs on oxytocin. In 2015, researcher Miho Nagasawa at Azabu University measured exactly what happens inside you when you look into your dog's eyes. Your oxytocin surges. Not surprising. You love your dog. But here's what shocked the entire research team. Your dog's oxytocin surges too. Same hormone, same biological bonding response, firing in both directions simultaneously, from nothing but eye contact. This doesn't happen between you and a horse, not with a cat, not with any other animal your ancestors spent thousands of years living beside, only dogs. Because over 40,000 years, the wolves that could hold your gaze got fed more, protected more, survived more. They found the deepest bonding system your brain has, and learned to reach inside it with a look. That look your dog gave you this morning wasn't affection. It was 40,000 years of evolution aimed directly at you, and it goes even deeper than that. Try something right now. Point at something across the room. Your dog looks at the thing, not your finger. The actual thing you're pointing at. You probably think that's obvious. Simple. What any intelligent animal would do. In 2010, researcher Julian Kaminsky at the University of Portsmouth tested your closest living genetic relative, the chimpanzee, on exactly this: an animal smart enough to use tools, to solve complex puzzles, to learn hundreds of words in sign language. It doesn't understand what pointing means. Your dog does. Instantly. Without training. Without ever being taught, because your dog didn't evolve to read animal signals, it evolved to read your signals. The specific subtle gestures humans use with each other, the micro-expressions, the slight shift in your posture when you're about to do something, the change in your breathing when you're anxious. Your dog has been studying your species for 40,000 years. It knows things about you that you don't know about yourself. But here's what nobody tells you about most of those 40,000 years, because for the majority of that time, the relationship between your ancestors and dogs wasn't anything like what you feel now. It was a trade, purely functional, completely unsentimental. Your ancestors got hunters, trackers, guards who could hear and smell threats in the dark that no human ever could. Dogs got food, warmth, protection. That's it. No beds, no names, no emotional attachment your ancestors would have admitted to. That's what they would have told you if you'd asked. But here's what they actually did. They buried their dogs. Archaeologists keep finding them across multiple continents. Dogs in graves, carefully placed, deliberately arranged, going back 14,000 years. At sites in Germany, Israel, Siberia, North America, the pattern is the same. Your ancestors, people who had almost nothing, who spent every single day fighting to stay alive, who couldn't afford sentiment of any kind, took time to bury their dogs, the same way they buried each other. And at one site in Israel dating to 12,000 years ago, they found something that should stop you completely. A human skeleton, elderly, hand resting on a dog buried beside them, not placed near the dog, on it, touching it, like the last thing that person did was reach out and rest their hand on their dog. And the people who loved them decided that's how they should stay. 12,000 years ago, before cities, before writing, before anything you recognize as modern human life. Your ancestors died, and the people who buried them thought they should have their dog. You felt a version of that, maybe not with death, but you know the specific weight of a dog not being there anymore, the way a house feels wrong when they're gone, the way you catch yourself moving toward a spot they used to occupy and then stopping. That feeling isn't modern sentimentality. That feeling is at least 12,000 years old, and it tells you something important. Somewhere inside all that transactional hunting and surviving and sleeping next to each other in the cold, something shifted between your ancestors and theirs. The trade became something else, something neither species planned for, something that crept in so slowly neither of them noticed until it was already permanent. And here's the part that makes the whole story strange, because dogs changed to be near your ancestors. That much is clear. Calmer, more readable, more tuned to human signals than any other animal on Earth. But your ancestors changed too. Anthropologist Pat Shipman at Penn State spent years arguing something most researchers weren't ready to hear. Humans with dogs could hunt more efficiently, track further, cover more ground, detect threats earlier. Groups with dogs survived winters that killed groups without them, which means at some point in your ancestral line, having a dog wasn't a lifestyle choice. It was the difference between your bloodline continuing and ending. You exist right now partly because one of your ancestors threw a wolf something to eat, and that wolf didn't run. Here's the full picture. 40,000 years ago, a wolf sat at the edge of your ancestors' fire and made the decision, consciously or not, that humans were worth getting close to. That one moment repeated across thousands of generations produced every dog that has ever existed. It produced an animal whose brain releases the same bonding chemical yours does from eye contact alone. That reads your gestures better than your closest genetic relatives can. That knows your emotional state before you've processed it yourself, that your ancestors grieved like family and buried with their own hands 12,000 years before anyone invented writing. None of it was designed. None of it was planned. It was just what happened when two species spent 40,000 years being useful to each other. And then, somewhere in all that usefulness, found something neither of them expected. That look your dog gives you, the one that made you pause for just a second this morning. That's not projection. That's not you seeing what you want to see. That's not an animal performing affection because you fill its bowl. That's 40,000 years of something that decided your kind was worth the risk. That learned your face, your signals, your emotional language, your bonding chemistry. That sat beside your ancestors when they died and let them rest their hand on it in the dark. Your dog didn't choose you specifically, but its ancestors chose yours. Every generation, for longer than civilization has existed, and now neither of you knows how to be without the other, which was probably the whole point, from the very beginning.